It's everything from front-end to back-end development to API development. Really, the agents you need. I have about 25 different agents now in my code environment. Does this mean that these teams are all that you're going to need moving forward? No. Anyone who's ever been a team of on-call with only 4 people in it and one of them's a product manager knows this will not work to scale massively. But it sure as heck is going to accelerate the time to move from idea to production. Sure as heck is. And when we step back and look at the MIT reports, we realize there's a lot that you need for agentic systems. When you look at that blueprint, first of all, agents are powered by inference, meaning access to the best foundational models and capabilities to support them is absolutely critical. A broad range. And next, for defining these new architectures, developers need tools and frameworks that are going to help them build those agents. And then deployments in operations and production still remain a massive blocker for realizing the value. And lastly, agents need better mechanisms for discovering each other and the data and what they can do. And if we just look at the first one of these, decomposition. Agents take high-level objectives as input and decompose them into plans and any required code necessary to solve that problem. Unlike traditional static applications, they execute dynamic, really dynamic, and changes during runtime. The second is this important concept of self-reflection. This is entirely new to us. Rather than running through their instructions from start to finish like a pipeline, they then self-reflect until they've reached a desired goal. Is there another agent? Is there more data out there that can help me? And third is action and tool to use. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, these new application paradigms demand new tools and frameworks. And when you look at the frameworks, the open frameworks that take the heavy lifting out of orchestration, we've seen a lot of momentum around frameworks like Crew AI, LangGraph, and Llama Index. We've also created the Strands Agent SDK, an open source framework that delivers a simple, modern-driven approach to building agents. And Strands, which we released in July, brings new capabilities for building multi-agent systems, including agent-to-agent support, data persistent for agent conversations, and these multi-agent workflows, which is so crucial. We've seen massive support from Anthropic, Ahir, Meta, Mistral, 12 Labs, Stability, and Writer. It's not just about frameworks, though. Model context protocol. This ability for a model through conversational natural language to be able to interpret APIs and pull back an answer for its reasoning, crucial. Many of us already have our API strategy. APIs have been in enterprise use for over 15 years now. Have you thought about writing your own MCP for other businesses to interact with in the appropriate way? Or are you going to leave it to others like I did when I wrote my own MCP to interface with my financial services provider? Maybe you should be writing your own MCP in the same way you handled your API strategy. But getting agents to production has still been way too hard. And let's look at some of the reasons why. First is figuring out how to securely execute and scale this agent code. This involves building, configuring, and scaling a runtime and execution environment that can handle dynamic agent code and workloads. That in itself has been a challenge. Then you need a way for your agents to remember past instructions. Memory, both short-term and long-time, is very, very different in an agentic world. Storing memory for agents is not as simple as storing traditional application states in OLTP databases. It requires supporting both performance logging of short-term activities as well as extremely long context. That's a challenge. Next, enabling the agents to act with true autonomy. Amongst those floor limits that we mentioned previously, fine-grained access controls enable agents to only have the data sources you allow. Having just got our data to a point where we feel like we have the right governance over it, we do not want to lose track of that right now as we move into the agentic world. And next, agents are only as valuable as the actions they can take. To help with this, they need to be able to use a number of common agentic tools. One example of this, using code to perform tasks that foundation models haven't been pre-programmed to do, like complex mathematical calculations, which can be grounded, or maybe you need formal reasoning on those mathematical calculations. And next, what about discovering content? How many documents have you got? How many objects have you got? How many OLTT databases? How many did you want them to access? In which order? Securely. And finally, we sure as heck need to know what they're doing and what is going on. And for all the learnings that Amazon and Amazon Web Services has had for the last few years with generative AI and the last 20 years of machine learning, it is the reason that we moved away from that undifferentiated heavy lifting and launched Bedrock Agent Core. Now this is in preview right now. There's only 4 regions in the world that have this. In Australia, because you know you folks love to be first. It's also available in the Sydney region right now in preview. And this brings along a whole set of capabilities to solve those challenges and remove that undifferentiated heavy lifting that you're looking at. Let's look at the first one. This Agent Core runtime. It's a secure serverless runtime purpose-built for deploying and scaling dynamic AI agents, regardless of the framework, protocol, or modern choice. Really important. Next, memory. The work that's gone in to ensure that memory works appropriately, providing both the right short-term and long-term memory, is fascinating to me. Like as humans, when we look at short-term and long-term memory, we can only actually remember 7 pieces of information in that short-term memory buffer. It's one of the reasons license plates, by the way, are that number. But then, how do you move that into the longer-term memory? What is relevant? What isn't? Over time, the brain does a ton of work to take those frequent short-term memories and build them into the structures of neurons in our brain to provide that long-term mapping. And we know, for example, in humans, emotions are a powerful catalyst for forming long-term memories for us. How are you going to solve the same system? And we've done that with Agent Core. Next, what about identity? This one is crucial. As with everything in Amazon Web Services, security is absolutely priority 1, followed by operational excellence being priority 2. That's why we've looked at it really seriously. We provide secure, centralized access management for AI agents, enabling seamless integration, not only with AWS resources, but third-party services such as Okta and Microsoft Entra ID. We know that that is so important for you. And then yes, we'll build in an agent code interpreter, so that you can execute code supporting multiple languages easily and clearly. And next, Agent Core browser tool. So much of the information, so much of the interaction that these agents have to do is still through a web browser. And again, one of the things I'm encouraging folks to do, I'm sure every single person in this room has a search engine optimized website. Anyone not have that? No, of course you have. And you've looked at that search engine optimization. Have you looked at LLM optimization of your websites? Is it readable? Interestingly, I use AI tools for about 2 or 3 hours a day right now in what I'm doing. It's interesting to me dropping in URLs of websites that now are blocking LLMs. And there's many reasons why an enterprise or a public sector body might need to do that. One of the things I'd encourage you to do that is, are your websites LLM queryable? I would argue your public website absolutely needs to be queryable and accessible, because then it's going to go higher up on any LLM returning a result. That means things need to be in HTML, not buried in a Java program on your website somewhere. In Agent Core browser tool, we bring that to life in a secure way for the agents to web browse and take actions as appropriate. Next, we need a gateway. These systems have got to be able to have a secure, auditable gateway to other systems. Gateway provides an easy and secure way for developers to build, deploy, discover, and connect to tools and agents at scale. They can connect to APIs, Lambda functions, existing services, MCP-compatible tools, and make them available to the other agents. And finally, that crucial observability for us as leaders to know what is going on. And I found it really interesting in the keynote this morning. I found 2 things really interesting. One was they talked about model choice, not being locked in to a model. And the second thing was they mentioned my alma mater, Capital One, on stage as well, which I thought was pretty cool. But the model choice is really, really important. And in Amazon Web Services from day one, we've focused on giving you the broadest possible choice, including OpenAI's weighted models that got announced just a few days ago. When we endeavour, as these new models are released, for example, Opus 4.1 from Anthropic, to get it into Bedrock the same day it's made available. And you will always want to use these large language models. What I'm finding is, yes, people will use these large language models, the commercial ones, the open source ones. But interestingly, in agentic systems, it's the ability to take really small models and fine-train them, fine-tune them. I've even seen 20,000 parameter models, and yes, well, many in the many billions. I'm talking about 20,000. One customer I worked with created a 20,000 parameter tiny model, could run in a CPU, didn't need a GPU, to answer one query very repeatedly and make it available in the agentic system. So this ability, yes, to have complete model choice is crucial. So you can change as you need to. Let's take a look at an example of this working together. In this example, we're going to build an agentic loan processor, one that accelerates risk analysis based on credit and other data before passing to a human to finalize. So we've got some inputs. Let's have a little look. We're going to use the Crew AI framework to compose 3 new agents running across multiple hosts, not just Bedrock or Amazon Web Services. First, an intake agent that can organize loan application. Second, a credit agent that can analyze credit worthiness and calculate risk metrics. And our third is an underwriting agent which takes our analysis and writes a recommendation. Then it's passed off to a human to review. Now let's use Agent Core to make our proof of concepts ready for production. So first we're going to add that memory, that crucial memory declaration. Now when we add memory to our agent, we simply give the memory group a name, description, decide how long we want memories to be stored, that's a crucial decision, and add memory strategy to help the model sort short-term memories into useful long-term memory categories. And with this, our configure agent can now remember details from previous conversations and provide a personalized experience. Just think about that for a second, though. Just think about that. Think of all of the thousands, hundreds, and some customers, tens of thousands of bills you pay in your procure-to-pay operation. Now think about the fact that this is remembering the previous bills. Now think about this if you get an anomaly, or fraud, or it thinks there's fraud, or you've got an agent that you've trained on patterns to fraud, and it's looking continually at all of those coming through. This fundamentally changes the game. Next, we want our agent to utilize tools from across the organization. So we'll add Agent Core Gateway, and here we'll set a role for the agent to use, and we're going to attach our authorization method, either using Agent Core Identity or another externally managed identity provider. We know many of you have very different choices. We aim to support as many as possible. And then we're ready to add targets to that gateway. These are specific resources we want the agent to be able to use. Maybe we'll add a target to Lambda, our serverless execution engine. Maybe we're going to search S3, where we've got over 400 trillion objects stored for customers around the world. Maybe you want to go to some historic loan documents in S3, and that gateway is going to enable an external API for agents to do income verification. Next, we want the agent to handle any calculations that human underwriter might have had. We're always going to have some specific code that we want the code interpreter to execute in this. So we add an Agent Core Code Interpreter, and now the underwriter agent will be able to perform the analysis, adjusting the weighting of the borrower's debt-to-income ratio, and the agent can quickly create and execute code needed to do the calculation. And now we're ready to deploy. Well, we used Agent Core's runtime secure serverless environment. It's going to handle both the real-time and long-running agent workloads, automatically scaling to meet demand, pay as you go. And we just create that runtime instance, specify the entry point, which is a Python file for agents, and runtime handles all the infrastructure scaling and security. And finally, and this is the bit I love, we can use that Agent Core observability to monitor how the agent is performing. and get insights into the health and usage. And these are the dashboards that are going to enable us to debug problems across the agent's process. Like if our loan process is taking a long time to calculate risk, or to understand which edge cases are causing application ingestion to fail. And that's it. We have a fully production-ready agent deployed, secured, metered, and scaled, and it's ready to help us transform our business, all with the freedom of models, of authentication providers, and where you want to run it. Now, I've only had a short time today to give you just a synopsis of what's going on, the challenges, the lessons learned, but I've hoped to give you a peek insight into how to remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting that people have struggled with to date. And with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for listening to me.